are talking about, speech-to-text interpreter. We talked about hearing aids. We talked about the importance to have a good connection, good internet connection. The importance to have maybe the speech-to-text interpreter in front of you. The importance of a good acoustic. Anything that you think might be important?
Yeah, light. Just for this, my picture is a lot darker than the two of yours are, but I still think that my facial expressions are there. So the light means a lot. And I have also been FaceTiming with people with hearing loss, and they say, "Oh, could you change a little because you have some light coming in behind you or something, and that would disturb the lip reading."
Marcel, would you like to add that something?
Yeah, for me the same. Light is very important for see the face, for the non-verbal communication, but also for reading the lips. And that is also that I not so like. By you is it working fine, but the electronic background in behind, because sometimes the faces are a little bit moving, or you cannot see very good the faces, and that make it the lip reading more difficult.
Yeah, we call it visual noise.
Yeah, maybe to have like not this background maybe, but like a video background that
No,
is
not a
moving.
video. No, thank you. It moves too much.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very disturbing. Yeah, so that is visual noise.
Before you said that subtitles must be word per word subtitles. That is very important. In LTA project, we also care about accessibility for maybe person who needs more simplified subtitles. What do you recommend about it? Do you prefer more simplified subtitles or less simplified subtitles? And why do you think, and in what situation do you think easy subtitles should be a plus for certain persons?
Well, I like to have what happens in the room interpreted to me, but I don't want so much to have interpreted what is meant. That is for my brain to do that. But again, some people might need that. So for a conference, for instance, it would be nice that you tick the box. What kind of accessibility do you need? Do you need verbatim or do you need easy to read? Because then it may not be the same interpreter that we should use.
Yeah, can I give an example? When you look to the Teletubbies on the television, that is a program for small children, then it's the spoken language, very simple words. And then it's also important that each word is typing. But when you are working academic meeting or an other meeting, what is with a lot of difficult words, then is it also important that each word is typing. Personally, I don't like so much to make it simpler. Maybe when the speed goes so fast by the speaker, that you then can say with the client, okay, what are we doing? Do we make more summaries, or do we make more short breaks for the interpreter? That is also an option. And of course, that is related to a kind of meeting. Is it a very social talk meeting with the interpreter? Then it's for me not some big problem when that is not so accurate, or there are more spelling mistakes. But at the work settings, but I think also for student at education setting, is it very important that you have a good quality of the speech-to-text. And people with learning difficulties or with language difficulties, and you work for them, of course, then is it fine to have more the subtitles of the speech-to-text in more easier language. But when the presentation is not in easy language, then is it a very difficult question. Is it up to the speech-to-text interpreter to make the language easier in the text? Personally, I don't like that. I don't like when sign language interpreters make it easier for the deaf person, or I think that is not the job of the role of the interpreter. But that is also a little bit a personal opinion.
Yeah.
No, I think the message from a speaker, we should not have interpreted what does that person think about this topic. We should be informed what is the person saying, and then we should manage to understand what is the meaning in this topic. Some years back at a conference, I had some speech to text, and I was all the time on the screen informed they're talking about so and so, and I was thinking, yeah, but what are they saying about that topic? During the break afterwards, if I want to go to the speaker and ask a question, I'm not able to ask a qualified question because I don't really know what the person was saying about the topic. So all I could address would be to say, so you were talking about that topic. Yeah, how interesting is that? So, and this is a problem, I think, that sometimes this is our situation and other people may think that we don't really understand anything. So that is important, that we still get our brains to work at that high intellectual level that we are able to.
So we talked about the working settings. In what other environments do you think that real-time subtitles should be provided so that people who use hearing aids can have full accessibility?
I think that is very important also to talk about education sessions. I can say something more about the primary school and the secondary school, but we see also more and more lifetime education at work in your free time. And then is it also fine that you have the possibility to hire a speech-to-text interpreter. And of course, when and also here is the same question and discussion as we had before. Is the training course about the motors of cars or very technical aspects, or training course about the history of Denmark, then is also needed different type of speech-to-text interpreters. The one speech-to-text interpreter have more feelings for technical stuff related in car, and the other have maybe more feelings for history and that kind of stuff. But some speech-to-text interpreters can do both very well. Maybe the most of them. That is also related to the personal interest of speech-to-text interpreters. But example, when you go a training course at the university or in high school, also there is it little bit the same as the work setting. How is the room? Is the people sitting in a circle? How big is the group? Is it talking about 10 people? Is different than 100 people sitting in a theater setting? And also there, for me, it's important the light, the acoustic, no background noises, Can I see the speaker very well? Is it needed that I use the knock loop system so that I give the speaker or the teacher a special mic? And then we have the speech-to-text interpreter. And then is it important to say that the transcript that the speech-to-text interpreter make is only for the student and is not for all the other students in the classroom. The speech-to-text interpreter make that only for the student, but know that that is possible in the Netherlands. But example, in the Scandinavian countries, it is not possible to share the transcript or that the interpreter give the transcript of the meeting to the client. So that is also happened at work settings and in other meetings. But I think that Ida maybe can say something about speech-to-text interpreters at the secondary and the primary schools.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have worked as a consultant for school children with hearing loss who are included in local settings, and it is still not used that we introduce speech to text to these kids. And if you look to Great Britain, they have puppet theatre with subtitles. So, for instance, Little Red Riding Hood, they will put up a picture of Little Red Riding Hood, and then it will be written, what is she saying? So you can actually practice reading and to read with understanding. So it can be done, but it is still not introduced here. And the typical thing is not until a young person goes into university, then they are introduced to speech to text, which is very strange, really very strange, and they have never heard of it until then. I'm quite confident that it should be introduced because it is a good mean for these kids to have it. It is sometimes used if a film is being shown to have the subtitles put on if they're available. And then you mentioned, Marcel, to have the transcript. That is not possible in the Scandinavian countries. You can, in the Netherlands, have this transcript from a meeting. And I think in UK, they can pay to have the transcript where you can have it for free. But that is also a legal thing in the Scandinavian countries, so that the interpreter cannot risk to be taken to court for something being said in a meeting. It depends on what kind of meeting it is, of course. But I do appreciate when I work in international settings that I can have a transcript after a meeting so that I can run through all the different topics again, because I still do concentrate in more ways than somebody who has a typical hearing.
Sure. So to fill the gaps that maybe you could have during the meeting.
Yeah, quite.
And what other settings do you think should provide a speech-to-text interpreter? We talked about school now.
Yeah, and it is good to say something about cultural life, about the film examples in the Netherlands. When you go to the cinema, all the movies from abroad have subtitles, but all the movies in the Dutch language have no subtitles. Sometimes there are special film meetings with subtitles, but it is very limited. That is the same happened in the theater. In the theaters, the plays are without subtitles. Also, musicals are without subtitles. Only the operas have subtitles, but that is it in the top of in the theater, in the top of the stage. There you can read the text. Some years ago, Ida and I were in Oslo in the beautiful theater
Yeah.
the Opera House in Oslo, maybe you know it.
Yeah.
And there you can read the subtitles in the back of the chair before you. And there you can have two options to have the subtitles in English or in the language of Norway. But maybe in Denmark there are other possibilities.
No,
Aida
no,
says no.
we don't have that. No, but we do have in the opera the subtitles, but they are just above the stage. And I think in opera they sing the same text for a very long time, so it is not so hard with opera. But we are better now with films in Danish, because film producers here receive support from the Danish state, and if they do not provide subtitles, then they will not have the support. So that's a financial thing, and that is apparently a good way to do it.
Yeah.
But also here you see a lot of different. In Sweden are all the films in the Swedish language with subtitles. In the United Kingdom, you see that musicals and a lot of plays are with subtitles. Not all, but a lot of. Example, in the big theaters in London, but also all over the countries, there are a lot of situations that speak to text is included.
So to summarize a little bit, this is our final question. Since the necessity to provide real-time subtitles for person who use hearing aids is a topic that, as we have seen, is not discussed very often, what is your final recommendation?
Maybe say something about settings also for personal situation, a party, but also not nice setting when you need to go to a funeral or you need to go to the hospital. Also, that for that kind personal moments, you can also use speak to text interpreter. Personal, I do that not so much, and I'm little bit dubbing. Some people like to do that, but it is sometimes also a little bit complicated when you go to a marriage of a party from friend of you, and you take you speak to text interpreter with you, then is it very important that you contacted before your friend if it is okay that you bring the speak to text interpreter with you. Example, when I have a birthday party in my family, I do that never. And when I do that, they will looking a little bit, oh, what has happened here and what is the person doing, so that is a good introduction, very important, of the speech-to-text interpreters. Also at work setting, it's very important that I at heart of hearing person, but also the speech-to-text interpreter explain what he do, what he or she is doing, so that there is no misunderstanding about the role of the speech-to-text interpreter. But maybe Aida use for personal settings sometimes the speech-to-text interpreter.
No, I don't. I use what I can get on my TV, and I also use it now when I watch YouTube films. I really appreciate that it is there now, so I'm looking for it every time and really enjoy it when it is there. About going to a party, an old friend of mine went to her son's 50th birthday, and she was very worried. So she said, "Oh, I will try to have a speech-to-text interpreter with me." And of course, the son said, "Yes, this is a very good idea." And it was such a great idea, and everyone around the table where she sat really enjoyed it, and they were also having some fun with this. And she wrote me the next day and said when she came home, but she couldn't fall asleep because she was so happy. It was a long time ago that she had heard so much and had really been a part of the party. So she was so happy that she had tried it. So this is a good thing. And I think this is also important that elderly people actually find out that this is possible and they can do it.
Yeah.
But I have another thing, because with the European Federation Hard of Hearing, I have traveled a lot. And at the gate, when they call people out and say which in the plane should come up first, and there am I, and I always walk up, and then it is not me. And they have so many big screens, and it takes nothing. I mean, they can pre-type these sentences and show it on a screen, and then just add the numbers. So there's a huge thing in transport, I think, with airports, trains, buses, whatever, where we can also have good use of speech to text.
Piero, I like to say something others about work settings.
Yeah.
It's good to know that I have only one speech-to-text interpreter with me. If the meeting for 2 hours, it's also one, but if the meeting 6 hours, I have also one, a very limited time, two with me. So that means that at the coffee break or at the lunch break, also the interpreter have a coffee break and lunch break. That is fine, but on the other hand, not fine, because in the coffee break, there is a lot of background sounds, and that is for me sometimes very difficult to participate part of the meeting, because then the lunch time without the support of the speech-to-text interpreter cost me more energy than the whole meeting. Because I need to concentrate so much to listen, to looking, because the hearing aid are not able to reduce all the background noises. Some hearing aid programs are able to focus to the audio speakers and have a possibility to reduce the background noises, but there is a limitation in that. So sometimes in PR reclame of a new hearing aid, they present them as wonderful, and that you can hear everything also in Nois's room. Maybe sometimes, but in the most of times, it's hard working for the hearing aid, but also for the hard of hearing person.
But the problem is also that the background noise, coffee breaks, will be other people talking, and other people's voices and speech sounds is the same frequencies as that we are using. Then some will maybe recommend you to use your smartphone and some app that could translate or write what people are saying, but that microphone is just as vulnerable as the microphones in your hearing aids. So we sometimes we escape to the back kitchen or something to have quiet around us and be able to talk.
So in conclusion, more speech-to-text interpreters for every situation.
Yes,
That's the key. That's the key.
Yeah, that is the key. That there is a good access to speech-to-text interpreters, so that there are enough. And but it's also important that the speech-to-text interpreters are educated very well. In the technical stuff, some speech-to-text interpreters use the Velotype or the Steno machine or type in a keyboard, and then it is good that the speech-to-text interpreter have also the knowledge about the technique. but sometimes the machine or the keyboard is broken, or there is not good internet connection. Sometimes there are some technical difficulties.
Yeah. Hopefully in the future, automatic speech recognition will be better.
Yeah, maybe, but it is also important to train the automatic speech recognition.
So thank you, Aida and Marcel, for joining. Thank you very much
Thank you.
for all your interesting point of views.
LTA Live Text Access, Universitat Autónoma de Barcelona, SDI, Internationale Hochschule, Scuola Superiore per Mediatori Linguistici, ZDF Digital, European Federation of Hard of Hearing People FHO, Velotype, Subti Access, European Certification and Qualification Association ECQA. Co-funded by the Erasmus Plus program of the European Union. Erasmus Plus project 2018-1-DE01-KA203-004218. The information and views set on this presentation are those of the authors and do not necessarily reflect the official opinion of the European Union. Neither the European Union institutions and bodies, nor any person acting on their behalf, may be held responsible for the use which may be made of the information contained here.